Hey guys, Professor Pokke here. So you might have seen me from other smashing hits with regards to our educational content, such as our speed tuning video from 1 year ago, beginner's guides, gacha systems, as well as a lot of similar things that we have done back in the past. And today, it is a very rare opportunity that I finally have a little bit more time to log in and deliver to you guys yet another educational stream slash video that is gonna be delivered because of a recent resurgence in this thing called the cost system in Honkai Star Rail. So without further ado, I don't even know if you have a budget for intro. Roll an intro. Don't even like, bro. That's E6 well yang. That is a E6 well yang, right? That is definitively speaking 9 costs, right? That is 9, bro. Don't even go there, bro. Bro, don't even say free, bro. Bro, don't even say free, bro. So, okay, who even started the narrative that well is free? Cause it ain't me, bro. E1 Sunday, free well yang. Bro, I low-key almost got cancelled by the Twitter community for saying well is free, by the way. So I'm literally saying well is not free. Free well yang. As you guys can see, she is in fact using the free light code. Basically free light code. Sorry, my bad. Basically free light code. E6 S5 Bubbin. That is in fact a free unit. Before we proceed any further, just for a little bit more preface, right? There will be zero slander and agenda in today's content because this is purely going to be an educational content. Now, I know a lot of you guys who have watched my streams as well as my gameplay for, I would say, a good couple of months. You might have encountered myself personally using very similar languages that you might have seen, such as this. Look at my premium zero cost team. I just want to say, at the end of the day, it is going to be in a bit of banter, a bit of banter, a bit of funny vibes, and you know as well as I know that your streamer is just a little silly. But today is not going to be a day to be silly, because I think despite us having this banter going on for a while, as well as in the large majority of the Honkai Star Rail community, this video should set the line as clear as possible as to how you can understand the cost system that God Rail is using ever since, I would say, for the past 3 years. So without further ado, what is the cost system? So the very first thing that we can just set as a black and white rule is pretty much this, right? Any limited or standard 5-star units or light cones within Honkai Star Rail is going to be 1 cost. And then you can see from this little thingy right here, if it's a limited 5-star unit or light cone, it is 1. That is yellow. And then if it's gonna be a standard 5-star light cone, it is gonna be blue. Now, today's topic is not to say which one of these have a lower cost, because I actually asked this exact same question to Twitter, and unfortunately, we did get a lot of different responses, which can be seen from right here. Well, Yang's Nova Flare has ruined the cost system. But frankly speaking, the cost system by itself has been unchanged. It is just whether or not a player has access to some units within HSR that might not be the same for another player, right? So let's proceed further on what is the cost system, on why you want to use the cost system, because the fundamental principles of you even using this as a matrix, it is to essentially summarize how much investment do you need for your X team. So it could be a Final team, it could be a Remembrance team, it could be a Casters team, it could be a Elation, whatever team it's going to be, to accomplish certain things. Most notably from our current player base, it is either a full clear, so that is going to be 3 stars, or it is going to be the famous little thing called zero cycling, which till this day doesn't really do anything other than you flexing on the casuals with your 400 different Ego 4-piece and 2-piece one, right? But that is pretty much why people use a cost system, right? To gauge how many of these 5-star units are currently present in said team. It is not about how you got these 5-star characters in said team. So an example over here, this is gonna be from a random account that I discovered called MrPokke's account. This is gonna be a 12 cost Avenite, which is E2S1, E1S0, E0S1, as well as E2S1. Then on this team right here, it is gonna be a 11 cost facial, which is E2S1, E0S1, E1S0, and a E1S1. And then this is going to be a 11 cost Evanesia. So E2S1, E1S1, E0S1, as well as E1S0. I will also be doing a little bit of exercise towards the end of today's seminar, so that you yourselves can also have a better understanding on how do you identify set costs within a Honkai Star Rail team. So moving on into the next portion, which is going to be this, right? The number one objective of why the cost system was even developed is to cost max. It is not really as a tool for you to say X is stronger than Y. Or like the shield unit, it is stronger than the non-shield unit. Or I can zero cycle better than your zero cycle. It really is just here to serve as a guideline for players who want to play said team. How do you go about pooling for specific units, islands, or Litecoins to make that team even stronger? So right here, this is pretty much one of the most straightforward ways that you can use to identify the next step towards your team building upgrades within HSR, right? So I think a lot of guide makers, right, as well as like HSR content in general, one of the most important questions whenever a new unit comes out is, do you want to pull E1 or do you want to pull S1? Or maybe sometimes, do you want to go straight for the E2? So maybe like a final, right? Or maybe like when Himeko Nova comes out, who knows? Those are very, very important decisions that you're going to be making for your own account, because it will affect how you, especially as a free-to-play player, will allocate your limited pools for a long-term plan in Honkai Star Rail. Because meta-wise, right, zero cycle-wise, endgame content-wise, it doesn't really matter if you get a zero cycle today or tomorrow or the day after. It really matters on how long can you stick with your specific investments and bring them with you for as long as humanly possible before they eventually inevitably will face this thing called power creep within a gacha game, right? So if you are able to make use of the cost system, so for example, should you be pulling for E2 Akron or E2 Blade? Should we be pulling for E2 Finon or E2 Cerebra? Right? These kind of questions can be very easily answered by the cost system, so that you can save yourselves from pulling the wrong units, items, or Litecoins, and in turn make your specific team a lot more meta relevant, at least for a longer period of time, right? So that is gonna be that. Unfortunately, this is kind of reminiscent in real life, which is not all teams in HSR are made the same. And the cost system inherently has nothing to do with it, because it is inevitable that a new unit with newer teammates will have higher performances compared to the older units, despite the fact that both different units will cause you the exact same amount of pools, the exact same Stellar Jades, assuming that you don't get a little bit lucky or a little bit unlucky, right? It is the exact same currency. So, for example, right now, if I were to use a case like a 12-cost facial team, right? A 12-cost facial team, unfortunately, is just not gonna outperform a 12-cost remembrance or elation team. It is just a matter of fact. Because right now, Facial number 1 is a pretty old DPS, her multipliers are not going to be as high, and her synergy with newer units are still going to be a little bit outshadowed by either higher synergistic teammates or the shield environments we have in the current format. But this will always be in a rotational basis, because look at Firefly. Right, for a while she fell off, like she was tier 1 or 5, and then after a while they just gave her Noah Flare and then gave her Dahlia, and all of a sudden she's tier 0 again. So basically at the end of the day, there isn't really a more objective way for you as a player to measure which teams at their respective cost levels can give you that set level of performance, right? It is not used to compare whether or not a unit is tier 0 or tier 5. For those kind of inquiries that you might have, cost system is not for you. For those questions, kindly head on over to pridewin.gg and the exceptional tier list, right? So this is gonna be extremely important, like I mentioned. You want to use the cost system to plan your pools, but to not post agendas. Right? Look at the players, chatters, and community members right next to you at this very second, right? Look to your left, look to your right. Probably one of y'all buckles would have said some of these things right here, right? Bro, don't look at me, bro. Bro, don't look at me, right? So I'm pretty sure you have heard this very, very similar sentiments, right? X can 0 cycle with 3 costs, and Y could not 0 cycle with 3 costs. Therefore, X is better than Y, right? E2X can clear with lower cost. Therefore, E2X is better than Y. E4X, right? I wonder who this X could be. It's a standard unit. And therefore, E4X is gonna be in tier 0 because you basically use bro in every single 0 cycle. Or my roster is free, right? My roster is free. Therefore, it is a 0 cost clear. Hail God real, hail God real, right? And in this one, my X costs 0 cycle with pretty much one of the best relics as well as hours of reset can accomplish this achievement. Therefore, every single team, which is gonna be X, can do the exact same thing. So all of these things are what I would personally consider as Professor Pokke to be agenda posting, which once again, like I mentioned, it is not the purpose of the cost system, right? The purpose, once again, for the cost system is for you as a player to decide which units, Eidolons, or Lycones are you going to be pulling for next, so as to bring that specific team's performance up a little bit better if you were to, let's just say, pull for the wrong Eidolons, Lycones, or units, right? So that is pretty much it. Now, I'm just gonna go through a little bit more of some misconceptions that you guys might have for the cost system, and starting off with the biggest and most egregious misconceptions that I believe the HSR community has is that if it's gonna be a free 5-star, it is gonna be 0 cost, right? Bro, I don't know why the hell you are looking at, bro, like free Well Yang, the free Lycone, E6 S5 Bobbin, that is in fact a free unit. You know what, we're gonna, add a crop out. So essentially, if you believe that if a unit is free, therefore they should be 0 cost, you're essentially confusing this particular sentiment, because if you didn't spend any money or pools because they were given for free, it doesn't mean that the unit themselves inherently cost 0. Because this particular free thing, right, this term of free, whether is it gonna be an unconditional, everybody gets a free DHPT, right? Everybody gets a free Doctor Ratio, right? Everybody gets a free Archer, or a conditional free, like for example, those selectors, right? You could theoretically select Sparkle, or Kafka, or Acheron, or you could also theoretically select a Welt from your 300 standard selector, right? None of these things have anything to do with the cost system, because free itself it is not a matrix used by the cost system. It is a matrix that you want to consider by the developers, i.e. Dawei, right, HoYoverse. Whether or not they want to give this unit for free is up to them, and it is not up to our cost system. But as long as that specific unit is a 5-star, limited 5-star, standard 5-star, whatever it's gonna be, it will have a cost. Despite the fact that, you know, if you're gonna be having more devs listened, more quality of life, like let's just say for example, if Star Rail released another free E1 Archer, which we are gonna be getting, right? So all of a sudden, E1 Archer means gonna call themselves zero cost. That is going to be seen as a misconception, right? So let's just get it out of the way. And also, right, one last thing before I bounce. Battle Pass Litecoins, unfortunately, are not considered a cost because they are not a 5-star. And that's just the way that people do it in the cost system. So if you have anything up to do with that, and it is what to do, right? Okay, next misconception is pretty much this. A standard 5-star cost should be the same as a limited 5-star cost. So there's this particular unit right here that has been single-handedly responsible for this phenomenon, and which is probably one of the reasons why I even wanted to make this video in the first place, because Well Yang, especially E4 Well Yang, right, he has been appearing on the leaderboards for like every single zero cycle across the past almost 1 month, because he counts as a standalone cost system using the standard 5-stars instead of the limited 5-stars. But that being said, the reason why a standard unit's 5-star cost is different is because they are not held to the same standard. If you enjoyed this joke, smash that like and subscribe button, right? They are not held to the same standard as a limited 5-star, which is why ever since day one, right? If you play any gacha games in the history of all gacha games, one of the most important guide and advice that you probably hear is you never ever spend premium currency on the standard banners. It could be Star Rail, it could be Wuwa, it could be Zenless, it could be Brown Dust 2, it could be like whatever game it's gonna be. You always use the free resources the game will give you over time because they inherently use 2 separate gacha summoning banners. There is a reason for that, right? Whether or not Well Yang right here is gonna be buffed, not buffed, you know, E4, E6, it doesn't change the fact that the inherent value of a standard unit is not comparable to that of a limited unit, right? So for example, right here again, right, we have a lot more additional funds due to an influx of standard pools instead of just having that on limited pools. And on top of that, let's just say if there was ever gonna be a Well Yang banner, I would dare say majority of players, unless you are legitimately a zero cycling, like you only care about zero cycles, majority of the players would not be spending their premium currencies for a standard unit banner, and they will just save those up for a premium unit anyways, because eventually you could potentially lose them to 50-50s, which is where like the disparity comes, because some players probably got a E4 Well Yang from just playing the game. Whereas other players, after being peer pressured by all of the cost maxing zero cycles on the Herda website, they decided to spend their golden companion spirits to claim a E4 Well Yang. So at the end of the day, whether or not this is going to be affecting your bottom line as a player, it shouldn't change the fact that a standard unit will never have the same inherent standards, once again, as a limited 5-star, right? So also, this right here, right? I mean, unless you really want a zero cycle, maybe, but 99.999% of the player base, I would just never ever recommend you guys to claim a E4 Well Yang, right? Now, moving on into the next misconception, and that is gonna be a low cost clear is an easily accessible clear, right? So this is extremely common in the Zero Cycles community, especially between CN and Bilibili, because the criteria of them having that clear is only seen from the actual costs used in that specific team. But they will never ever take into account what relics and what resets are actually done in order to make that zero cycle happen. So for example, right, speed this particular stat, especially in zero cycles, it is almost non-negotiable because you have to hit the specific speed breakpoints most often of the time using a 4-piece eagle. And if you guys have been playing this game for a while, there's this whole elitist, right? You use 4-piece eagle, therefore elitist. The reason for that is because having a good eagle 4-piece with high speed on top, especially if that unit wants crit, like for example Fei Xiao, it is really difficult to guarantee that for every single player playing Honkai Star Rail, right? And then another thing, 2-piece Von Weg, right? I think this is giving you the 40% action very advanced. When do you decide to use 2-piece Von Weg, or do you want to just stick with the generic 2-piece, like your Lushaga, your Broken Kill if you guys still using that, or the normal 2-piece DPS set? All of these will have to take into considerations the RNG needed, the energy regeneration you gain, as well as not to mention grinding for that specific run itself. Because most of the time, if you guys see a zero cycle run on YouTube or Bilibili, if they don't stream themselves doing it, there is a pretty good chance that before that zero cycle actually happened, a lot of prep time has underwent for that zero cycle to actually take place, right? You have to figure out what is gonna be your speed tuning, whether or not you can get the exact energy required, because sometimes the boss hits you on the target all the way to the right, sometimes all the way to the left, sometimes hits you all three, sometimes your DPS gets the kill, sometimes fucking Tribby steals your kill from the additional damage, but all of these things will compound upwards from the amount of effort it would take you for a zero cycle, despite the fact that all of them have no cost. Because let's just say, for example, right, you have two S5 DDTs with a E1 Tribby and a E0 Sparkle. Do you think having S10 DDT is more accessible than having an E0 5-star? Because some might argue it is even more difficult. But at the end of the day, the cost system is not about accessibility. The cost system is only just a matrix, once again, to determine if you should commit your pools for your units, Eidolons, or Lycons. Which is why the moment you see the cost system as a way for you to not agenda push or like not use them as a performance metrics against other teams, but purely just for your objective to decide which things you want to invest in, then all of these things will become a lot more straightforward for you as a player, right? Now we are gonna move on into the last misconception, and that is gonna be my X-Cost team is the representation of all X-Cost teams. This is a little bit more of like a follow-up to the previous point, which is the time as well as the Reddit RNG required to grind for that low-cost run. At the end of the day, some people are just gonna get themselves luckier pools than you. Because this is a gacha game at the end of the day, right? Sometimes if you were to get a single 10 pool, you get an E1. Other times you go all the way to 160 pools just for an E0, right? Sometimes you have to be a complete free-to-play. There are complete free-to-plays that just skip on every single unit and they just go all in for an E6 Saber, right? Or they go all in for an E6 Wolf. But there are also other players that swipe just to get every single unit to E0. Because fundamentally speaking, as a gacha game, you don't really conflate these two things with the cost system, right? The cost system has nothing to do with how do you obtain things in Honkai Star Rail, because that is completely up to the gacha aspect of this game, not to mention relic RNG, which I think Goryo has done a pretty decent job ever since they add the dice as well as resins, but still RNG is going to be RNG, right? So for players looking, okay, you know what, I want to replicate the same X-Cost team clear, right? Following them exact steps, right? The exact speed, the exact same crit values, the exact same RNG, and you want to believe that just because a 4-cost Anaxa team can clear zero cycle, it means every single 4-cost Anaxa team can zero cycle. A better game to actually try is unironically League of Legends. Because in League of Legends, there's no such thing as gacha, right? The only thing that's differing yourself away from the other players using the exact same champion is basically your skill level, right? So that is pretty much that for our misconceptions. Then before we end off today's quick little Poke's classroom, I just want to do a little bit of example to see if chat has been paying attention, because I've noticed that as I was educating my chat, a lot of them were just listening, and then they have the little milk, right? A little wind. So they're basically spamming boobies. So now we're gonna put things into practice with guess the cost. All right. So what I have right here is going to be and E0S1 Sparksy, and E1S1 Yaoguang, except that I got my E1 Yaoguang in a single temple, and E2S1 Evanesia, and a E1S0 Huehue, which I personally used 2 gold spirits to get, meaning I did not spend a single stellar jade to get that E1 Huehue. So chat, what is the cost for this team right here? So I see Genshin guy saying 8 costs, Wes the Bra saying 2 costs, but I do see a lot of chatters essentially saying 11 costs, which is pretty affirming, but that is absolutely going to be the right answer because the cost is going to be seen right here, right? You have 1 E0, I don't know why my camera is just like... Okay, so this is gonna be our E0S1 Sparksy. This is gonna be 2 costs, followed by our 3 costs because it is a E1. It doesn't matter if you got in a single 10 pool or 160 pools or 300 pools. It doesn't matter because the cost is the only thing that matters, not how you obtain a specific 5-star. 4 cost Evanesia, and yes, you redeeming 2 golden spirits for Huehue doesn't change the fact that she is still a 2 cost unit using the cost system, right? So that is gonna be 11 costs. Well done, chat. Yippee yay. We're now gonna move on into the next example, and that is the infamous free unit. E0S1 Archer, in which I obtained the light cone for free by pulling for 200 pulls back in the 3.4 event. E1S0 Tribi with a S5 DDD, a E0S0 Sparkle, which I obtained for free from the selector, as well as another S5 DDD, as well as an E6S0 Well, where I completely got this E6 from either my standard pools or losing my 50/50s, and then the S0 is going to be tutorial. So what is the cost for this team? Okay, so we have 2 cost team, and there it is. It is a 12 cost team. It is a 5 plus 7 or 12 billion, 0 cost, 5 trillion, 7 cost team, right? I would say majority of y'all pretty much got the right idea. But like I mentioned just now, because the inherent value of a standard unit is fundamentally different from a limited, the cost is going to be a 5 plus 7 cost. That is 2 costs to E0S1 Archer, 2 costs to E1S0 Tribi, 1 cost to your E0S0 Sparkle, despite the fact that both of these units are running S5 DDD. So that is an S10 DDD. So I don't really care if that's going to be a 4-star or 5-star. If it is a 4-star, it is not going to be a cost in the cost system. And our E6S0 Weoyang is going to be a special plus 7 as a 7 standard cost for this answer right here, right? So with that, we're gonna move on into one final example, which is E2S1 Facial, E0S1 Asheville, where we redeemed a single Topaz Light Cone, and E6 S5 Robin, in which we use 6 golden spirits, as well as redeeming a 5 copies of Run Maze Light Cone, as well as a free E0S0 DHPT using the Battle Pass Light Cone. So for our final example, what is going to be the cost here? It is a basically free team, -5, free, 19, 20, 19 cost, a free team, war team, 0 cost obviously for the best DPS. You know what? I'ma just keep it a buck. That was actually a trick question. Because if at any point in time, y'all would think I would slander my wife.
Give me fire. Give me liberty. Give me E2S1D.
You are actually gonna be right, because like I said at the start of this video, this is a purely educational content video. So as a matter of fact, this is still ultimately gonna be a 19 cost team with our E6 S5 Bobbin taking a absolutely massive 7 plus 5 cost for a grand total of 13, followed by the 4 cost Facial, 2 cost Azure, as well as the 1 cost DHPT, right? So with that, I hope that you guys would have a better understanding for today's Pokke's Classroom on the cost system. In summary, right? In summary, I feel like we use these kind of costs for fun. Alright? Okay, at least I can say it for myself personally. I use it for fun. I don't really care too much if X unit is better than Y unit or Y unit is better than Z unit, because at the end of the day, as long as we are having fun in a gacha game, that is gonna beat it. But at some point, because of the influx of newer players coming into HSR, especially with this version, on top of a very blurred line ever since the inclusion of our E4 well into our 0 cycles, I hope that today's content was going to be a little bit more insightful and helping you guys understand exactly how cost works in Honkai Star Rail. So TLDR, a cost is about a 5 stars value in HSR, not how you obtain the set 5-star. It could be free, it could be not free, it could be pay to win, it could be free to play, you got this in the table. It doesn't matter as long as they are limited 5-star, 1 cost. Standard 5-star plus 1 more cost afterwards, right? So at the end of the day, when the day is gonna end, I hope that the cost system can be used for players to decide and allocate how do you want to pull for a specific archetype instead of using this aimlessly, right, in a blind agenda rage-based slender just to say X unit is better than Y unit, unless you are doing it in the spirit of fun, right? If you're doing it for fun, it's okay, right? So with that, I have come into the end of our quick little Professor Pokke video that I haven't done in a really long time. Let me know what you guys think in the thoughts and comments down below. Word of the day is gonna be cost. And any questions you guys might have, feel free to leave them down in the comments or just join on Discord and I'll try to answer all of them. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter. Use code POGGE for 10% off gamer subs, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.